everyone, and welcome to one of our knowledge transfer sessions. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, all the cash people hoard. I'm here with intern in our office.
How's it going, everyone? It's Luke here.
And so one of the things that I don't know, well, you've probably noticed this. We've been doing client meetings. You've been shadowing us all summer. Have you noticed that a lot of people, retirees, pre-retirees, they tend to have a lot of money in their bank account, a lot of cash they're holding, right?
For sure.
Now, you're a 19-year-old kid in college. Do you have a lot of cash in your bank account?
I wish.
Yeah, you wish, right? So it might be hard to relate to this a little bit. Sure. But what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about should you invest your security blanket, or what are we supposed to do with all that cash you have lying on the side, basically. As we go through this presentation, we have to treat today's information as general in nature. We're trying to give a good, well-rounded discussion on this idea of cash and why it's there and what you're supposed to do with it. But in the financial services industry, every situation can be different, so we have to treat today's presentation as general in nature. Just a quick note about myself. I have more than 18 years experience in the financial services industry. I've worked everywhere from a bank to an insurance company, and I've been running my own practice as an independent financial advisor held to the fiduciary standard for about 10 plus years now in Bellevue, Washington State. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the hopes, dreams, and anxiety of why we keep cash. Like, why do we do this thing? And then we're going to talk about the problem with keeping cash. Then we're going to talk about some suggestions on how we handle this. And then we're going to talk about how we handle this in our practice, basically. So you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So why do we keep cash? Now, why would you keep cash if you could get some?
Spend it on stuff.
Spend it on stuff, right? Is it always going to be on the fun things? What's the most fun thing you'd spend cash on, you think?
Oh, God. For me?
Yeah.
Going to a sporting event.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
That's what I mean by hopes and dreams, right? You're like, oh, I have money. I know I'd want to do something like this, right?
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. There we go. I like that one. Yeah, that's a good one. So why do we keep cash? Well, one of the problems is you can't invest everything, right? Investing has a certain amount of risk. If you put your money into your home, you might not be able to get that cash, right? There's lots of reasons why you can't invest everything, from liquidity to risk. And some practical examples for retirees is, let's say you retire at 62, and you're going to take Social Security till 67. What's the problem if you retire at 62 and you're not going to get Social Security till 67? Do you know?
And your money's just sitting in the bank.
Your money's just sitting in the bank.
You're losing out on interest.
You're losing out on interest, but you also need to spend money, right? You're not getting Social Security coming in until 67, so for 5 years, from 62 to 67, you need spending money. So you actually need some cash there. What if you want to remodel your home in 3 years? Your parents ever remodel their home?
Yep.
Yeah. So, if you think about it, right, you need cash to do certain things, right? So I'm saying you need cash, but I'm also saying it's a problem. Why? Another problem, and we're going to talk about all the problems first, then we talked about solutions, or why this is really a problem. But I talk about security blanket effect. Once again, you don't have a lot of cash, but let's say you had $20,000 in the bank. Would you feel more secure at night? Would you feel like you could sleep easy?
Easily.
Yeah, right? And so, one of the challenges or one of the benefits of having cash is that you can sleep at night. You're secure because you know if your car breaks down, you can take care of it. And then your hopes and dreams, right? I always worry that I'm telling people that I'm spending their hopes and dreams, right? Because, if you have $20,000 of cash in the bank, and I'm like, well, your emergency fund should only be $10,000, you might have that $10,000 set aside because you want to go to the Super Bowl. And you're like, oh, I don't want to tell John that because he's going to look down at me as a financial planner, right? So your hopes and dreams are a big part of this, and there's legitimate reasons why you hold cash. But I'm saying it's a problem. So why am I saying this is a problem? What's the problem holding cash? You've already said it a little bit. Inflation, nice. Well, what's the other one?
Interest.
All right, so let's talk about why there's two problems holding cash. Okay, so here's the first problem. In our office, we've been kind of training you on the difference between two types of inflation, right? CPI and M2 monetary inflation. Have you figured out what I mean by M2 monetary inflation yet?
Yeah, M2 is the printing of money.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's two basic concepts, right? Whenever you go to the store and you see the price of goods going up, we would generally call that general CPI. But then you're going to notice one or two things that just popped really hard. Ground beef is an example right now, or the cost of buying a new truck. And you're like, how did that go up so much? And one of the effects of the government overprinting money all the time is there's all this extra money in circulation, which causes inflation, but it causes it unequally. And so we would say standard inflation is somewhere between 2.5% and 5%, depending upon what you're trying to buy, right? And so let's start with the problem. Let's say you want $100,000 of cash on the side, which is not a crazy amount for a lot of retirees, and you're going to grow it at 3%. At the end of 10 years, you know how much money you'd have if you grew it at 3%, roughly? You can look at the screen. It's about $34,000. So you're
134.
134. And then, probably need to spend some money someday. You might want to make your hopes and dreams happen, right? Especially you made all that interest. So you spend the $34,000. You keep your principal whole. But you said inflation's there. And the problem with inflation is depending upon the time frame you're looking at this and the type of inflation you're affecting you're going to see your purchasing power is somewhere between 75% and under 50%. And you'd be like, well, how can it be under 50%? Well, you might, in 15 years, you might need to buy a truck. And you go, oh, crud, it actually really got expensive all of a sudden, way past CPI. So even though you're like, well, CPI I only planned for 2.5%, you have these one-time events that kill you, basically, right? Now, the other problem is what you can do with your cash. When we talk about investing, there's usually 3 things you can do with investing. You get to pick 2. Do you know what the 3 things are?
Growth, protection, liquidity.
Good job. Growth, protection, liquidity. You get 2 of the 3, right? And so, usually cash, you want to be liquid. You want to get it whenever you want. And you usually want to protect it, meaning you don't want to go crash if the market crashes. But that means you're usually giving up growth. And one of the problems is that when we look at this from more an institutional fashion, or we look at where people usually hoard cash, and you might you might not think bonds are cash, but they are fixed interest rate instruments, and a lot of times your cash solutions are going to be in this category, though not this risk category. You're going to see that you're not even hitting 3% on the 10-year returns in money market funds. And I used Fidelity's money market fund. I used iShares TIPS bond ETF. I used Vanguard's total bond money market index. And the reason I use these ones is because they're liquid and they're generally protected, not guaranteed, but they're either going to be considered a conservative investment or very conservative, depending upon how you want to look at that. And so there's no bank guarantees on these products. And so here's I would argue, the real problem. So I think most people get inflation's a problem in their cash. I think most people get that they're not getting very good interest rates, right? They live that. And you'll get to live that someday when you get your cash, right?
All right.
Right. But the problem is procrastination around this issue, because you should have cash. Like that is legitimately something you should do. Just lowering stress is valuable. But if you're not defining the exact math there, you might be over hoarding cash, right? You're procrastinating around it because you don't want to deal with your stress. If you set money aside to do something, you never did it, and this happens a lot for retirees. You get older, it gets harder to spend money. Well, then you procrastinated on it and you start to hurt yourself. And then the hard one, and this is partially why we have a job, is not taking advantage of interest rates. So, I mention this to you all the time. Generally people know they're supposed to exercise, right?
Yep.
Generally people know they're supposed to eat healthy, right? And they can go online and do it all themselves. They don't need to hire a personal trainer or anything. Do people do it?
No.
Right. And so that's the problem with interest rates is we have certain, especially retirees who have more free time, you might be going out there and CD shopping and doing all the good stuff you're supposed to do. But a lot of people are procrastinating because they just don't have time to do that component. They get everything else, like, crap, I just don't have time to do that. And that's partially why we have a job. So what's the suggestions on how you can handle your cash? Well, let's go through some suggestions, see if they make sense to you.
Okay.
First one, let's say you're doing everything else right. You're investing great, your money's growing like crazy, and yeah, you might be losing on a portion of your cash to inflation. Do you have to do anything?
No, it's not a real issue.
It's not a real issue, right? And so one of the first things you have to acknowledge is if you're doing everything right, and I usually benchmark it about 7% overall rate of return across all your money, then I don't care if you have cash. I might go, hey, it might be an issue for you. You might go, well, what do I do with my cash here? And I get it. But I'm more careful now at this point I'm more empathetic around what are your needs for cash, because I know you're doing everything else right, basically. And you should have cash. Define your goals and time horizon, right? Do you ever want to buy an RV?
Not right now, but maybe.
Maybe, yeah. It's never been my dream to buy an RV, but I have dreams I want to buy stuff with. I think about sometimes I'd like to get a like a mountain, like a cabin. That'd be kind of fun, maybe, right? So are you setting aside the money for that and actually follow through? Am I going to buy it? Maybe I didn't buy it this year, but I still will, or maybe it was a dream, but it just never materialized, right? This is why you review your finances annually, to try and figure out, are you starting to procrastinate on your cash position? We already talked about trade-offs of investing. You did a good job. I think you're starting to get this down pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. Protection, growth, and liquidity. You can generally only choose 2 of 3. Now, here's the big problem with cash. One of the easiest ways to fix it is to give up liquidity. So think about the classic idea of laddering CDs, right? Or laddering tips. Right? I showed you a tips fund. I didn't show you a tips ladder. Or buying fixed annuities, what we call multi-year guaranteed annuities, or buying structured notes. There's lots of things out there that will create a structure around something to give you better returns, but you're going to give up that liquidity, and you have to figure out, does that work for you? And using this example of 5-year CD at 4.5%, it's dominating the other solutions we showed, those bonds funds that are major bond funds, major money market funds. This is dominating interest rise. It's usually FDIC insured by the bank. It's usually guaranteed by the bank. Are you willing to lock up money? That's a very emotional issue for people to find. In general, no matter what you do, aim for 5% returns on your cash. Like if you can do this, you're doing a pretty good job. Now your emergency fund is very different. Like I would argue your emergency fund, just keep in savings. It's okay. That is generally going to be okay. But the rest of the money, that hoarding money you're doing for the future, well, all that future is having inflation hit. That RV you want to buy in the future, it's going to get more expensive over time. You better be trying to beat 5%. And then here's a nuance for retirees, or even working class people. And I asked you this question earlier. If you have a great paycheck and everything's going well in your life, do you need a lot of cash? Probably not, right? Because you have a paycheck, you can take out a loan if you needed something. Lots of ways to do this. And so one of the challenges for retirees is, and I find this at about the 10-year point, between 5 and 10 years, you get really comfortable with your financial plan, your cash flow, and retirees oftentimes stop hoarding cash to a certain degree because things are going just really well. And so, just consider focusing on your cash flow and not cash. And if you can make your cash flow really good, you don't need as much cash. So how do we handle this in our practice? And we coined a term together, didn't we? Right? Empathy and strategy. I like that, but it's accurate to what we do. Right. So always we do process and not products. We know products, but it's about the process of why you're doing something is more important. Recognize your cash position is often your hopes, dreams, and security blanket, and so we need to have empathy around that and understand that. So that's why when you tell me you want to go to the Super Bowl, I don't go, that's stupid. I go, okay, let's make that happen, right, and make everything else happen. Right? It's about the big things. We begin looking at math, and if you're otherwise okay, we don't worry about your cash. We will definitely do our job annually and poke at it and look at inflation and try and protect it. But ultimately, we're going to have this empathy and we're going to do math around this to make sure everything's okay. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Now we just need to get you to have a whole bunch of cash so you can put this in practice.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Can you give me some?
It's called a paycheck. So we're here to help. If you ever have questions, you're welcome to email us. We have more than 18 years. Well, I have more than 18 years experience in the financial service industry. You're at month
6
1.
weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks. Pretty good. But we love getting feedback from people or questions. Our practice is next to Overlake Hospital in Washington State. Thanks, everyone.